Welcome to Where We Listen, a space where every story is heard and every experience has value. This channel is dedicated to sharing real-life stories from personal experiences and those submitted by our community. Each story is a journey filled with lessons that shape who we are. In today's story, we follow the journey of someone who grew up under the intense pressure of being seen as the perfect child. A story of expectation, struggle, and ultimately self-acceptance. Let's dive into this heartfelt tale that many might find relatable, especially those who have faced the overwhelming weight of societal and familial expectations. Growing up, I was always the golden child. My parents constantly praised me for being smart, well-behaved, and hardworking. I remember my mother telling me how lucky she was to have such a perfect child, and my father would beam with pride every time I brought home a perfect report card. For as long as I could remember, I thrived on that validation. In school, I was always the one people looked up to. Teachers admired me, and my peers either respected or envied my academic achievements. It felt good, no, it felt incredible, to be that person. The child who was expected to go far, to achieve greatness, and to live up to the potential that everyone constantly talked about. But with every word of praise came the weight of expectation. You see, it's easy to enjoy the admiration, but it's a double-edged sword. Because when you're seen as perfect, there's no room for mistakes. I wasn't just afraid of failure, I was terrified of it. As I got older, the pressure mounted. Expectations weren't just from my parents anymore, they came from teachers, from family friends, even from strangers who had heard about my talents. Every A on a test was celebrated, but anything less felt like a disaster. I became my own worst critic. I started measuring my worth by the standards others had set for me. When I succeeded, I felt the relief of meeting their expectations. But when I struggled, even for a moment, it felt like my whole world would collapse. I remember one night in high school, I had a math test the next day, and I couldn't figure out one of the problems. I sat there for hours, staring at the paper, panic rising in my chest. In that moment, I wasn't just worried about the test, I was worried about what it would mean if I didn't do well. Would my parents still be proud of me? Would they still think I was perfect? The pressure didn't stop at school. When I graduated, I thought things would get better, that I'd be able to focus on myself, but the expectations only grew. It wasn't just about being the perfect student anymore, and now, I had to be the perfect adult. My parents expected me to land a high-paying job, to get married, and to lead a flawless life. It got to a point where I felt like I was living for everyone else. Every decision I made, every goal I set, it wasn't for me. It was for the image I had to uphold, the perfect image. And the more I tried to meet those expectations, the more I lost myself. I started to feel anxious all the time. Simple tasks became overwhelming, and I couldn't stop the voice in my head that told me I wasn't enough. I wasn't perfect enough, smart enough, successful enough. No matter what I achieved, it never felt like it was for me, it was always for someone else. One day, during my first year at work, I broke down. I had been pushing myself too hard, trying to meet deadlines, trying to prove that I was worthy of the job I had landed. But the stress got to me. I couldn't do it anymore. I sat in my office, staring at the screen, completely burned out. I felt like a failure. Everything I had worked for felt pointless. After that breakdown, I realized something had to change. I couldn't keep living for other people's expectations. I had to find out who I was, what I wanted, and what I needed in life. It wasn't easy. Letting go of perfectionism is a slow process, but it started with small steps. I began talking to a therapist who helped me understand that my self-worth didn't have to come from my achievements. I learned that it's okay to fail, to make mistakes, and to take a break when things get too overwhelming. At first, it felt like I was letting people down, my parents, my friends, even myself. But with time, I realized that I wasn't letting anyone down. I was simply setting boundaries and reclaiming my life. I started to focus on the things that made me happy, not the things that would impress others. And slowly, I began to feel lighter. The anxiety that had weighed me down for so long began to lift. I started to enjoy life more, whether it was in my career, my relationships, or simply in my day-to-day activities. I wasn't living to be perfect anymore, I was living to be me. Looking back now, I realize that being that perfect child was never my role to fulfill. It was something I thought I had to be, but it was never truly who I was. Life isn't about living up to an ideal or fitting into a mold that someone else creates for you. It's about finding your own path, embracing your flaws, and living authentically. Today, I no longer strive to be perfect. I strive to be happy, to be kind to myself, and to live in a way that brings me peace. And that, I think, is the greatest success of all. To anyone who feels the pressure to be perfect, whether it's from family, society, or even yourself, remember this: you are enough just as you are. You don't have to meet anyone else's expectations to be worthy of love and happiness. Your journey is your own, and it's okay to take it one step at a time. Thank you for listening to this story. This is where we listen, where every story is cherished, and every voice matters. If you have experiences or feelings you'd like to share, feel free to leave a comment or reach out to us. Together, we can create a supportive and understanding community. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.